Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I am a licensed marriage family therapist. I'm the Jer and Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel today. We're back with another episode about a sad rich white dude complaining about stuff. I'm late to the party. This is a story from over the summer. Harrison Butker, the Kansas City Chiefs field goal kicker, place kicker, um, gave a commencement speech at a Catholic college. He is Catholic. The college is Catholic. He's a famous football player. So they were like, come talk to our graduates. And he was like, okay, should I talk about football? Nah. Should I talk about my narrow definition of Catholicism? Yep. So it's a really terrible speech. He got a lot of flack for it. Coming at the story now, I think it's the start of football season is why it's on my mind, and I'm avoiding doing the Aaron Rodgers video that I inevitably will do. And yeah, he's an idiot. He has not apologized for it. He's doubled and tripled down, I think, now. He keeps not apologizing, but wanting to play the victim, not listening to anybody's feedback, like a pretty classic Catholic stance. But what I wanted to do today, instead of just grabbing sound bites or just having some clips, is go through his whole speech because I'm a glutton for punishment. To highlight that, like, A, he doesn't know what he's talking about. B, uh, he calls himself out, and his own hypocrisy is very apparent throughout this. And C, because it doesn't matter whether he gave an apology or not. It doesn't matter whether none of the context around it matters. We can just look at the speech itself and be like, this guy's an idiot. And here's the thing, I don't think Harrison Butker is an idiot. He's wrong on everything he talks about in this commencement speech. But like, he's got a degree in industrial engineering. I lived with a bunch of engineers in college. Like, engineering's hard. Like, it's not something that someone who is devoid of any intelligence can do. He's not just like a dumb football player who happens to be real good at kicking stuff. Pat McAfee is a dumb football player who happens to be real good at kicking stuff and is an entertaining human who owns that like he's a moron and couldn't do anything but kick stuff real good. Started out a soccer player, transitioned to football, has now transitioned to the entertainment industry. And again, like he's an idiot. He says he's an idiot. He thinks that being an idiot excuses him from things that he should be better about. Pat McAfee's a separate topic. Just highlighting that, like, some athletes own that they're not real intelligent, and the thing that they're good at is their sport. Cool. Self awareness is important. Harrison Butker doesn't do that. And also, like, I don't think he's an idiot. I think the brain capacity is there to take some of this criticism, learn from it, and have more nuanced approach to life. And he's just choosing not to. So, again, all of the things that he's going to talk about are his own choice. So I don't have a great way to do this. I could share my screen, I guess. I just have the full transcript of it up. So we're gonna go through it paragraph by paragraph. I'm just chuckling because what an unfriendly algorithm video I'm about to do here. Oh, Harrison Butker's commencement speech. I guess I'll not probably do the whole thing because that would take a while. It's a 20-minute speech. My camera will cut out at some point from overheating. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 24, I would like to start off by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you had imagined, and most likely neither was your first couple years of college. Not a great start. Uh, By making it to this moment through all the adversity thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learn the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary. So here's why I want to go through it bit by bit, because, like, again, he's a moron. Um, he's being a moron. I don't think he is a moron. What a weird thing. I don't think it's bad or wrong to like bring up COVID impacted things. Again, the height of COVID for a lot of people seems far removed, but for a college student, it would have been their high school through kind of freshman year. Benedictine College is a D3 college. Um, No, I don't even know that that's true. There's multiple Benedictine colleges. This is one in Kansas City, but it's a small liberal arts school. They probably closed for a bit in March 2019 and probably opened back up. And again, I'm going off of some reference here. I was working in higher ed at that time at a Christian college in athletics. The college that I worked at shut down for a while and then came back hybrid almost as soon as they could, before a vaccine was available. The college I worked at did have a pharmacy school on site, so it was able to do vaccines and like was pretty good about some of the science stuff. Pretty bad about like mask mandates, but like um, masking was required for a while. But like the hybrid thing wasn't necessarily great. And working in athletics, lots of things were done. So like COVID definitely impacted these kids. I don't have an issue with him bringing it up. It's more of like the way that he brings it up as like he knows he should highlight what adversity you've overcome. Good for you. How do we go on from there? But like that's not the point he wants to make. He wants to go off about COVID because he's a right wing idiot. Um, Suffering in life is only temporary. This is a false statement. This isn't even a doctrinally sound statement for somebody who claims to be so very better than you Catholic. Um, from the Catholic point of view, in Catholicism, suffering is part of life on this earth. We always will be suffering because heaven is our home, not this earthly squalor that we live in. So it isn't even a doctrinally accurate statement to say that Catholic, like in a Catholic lens, that suffering in this life is only temporary. Your whole life could be suffering in this world from a Catholic lens. Like, what is he talking about? He's this is the closest I think he gets to making a somewhat succinct point that like, hey, you made it through a hard thing. Good job. Now that hard thing is done, you made it. Good for you. But like he can't. Next sentence really is what he wants to talk about. As a group, you witness firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go as citizens and, yes, as Catholics. He introduces the concept of staying in your lane, bad leaders who don't stay in their lane. Harrison Butker, again, in case we have like forgotten, is a professional football player for one of the specialized positions in which he has very little contact with any other football players and doesn't really play the game of football. He just kicks it. He kicks off, next no contact. He has field goals. He's a good kicker. Like he's an all pro. Like he's been won multiple Super Bowls with the Chiefs. They're very good. He's very good. He's got a big leg, lots of distance. He's very accurate. Like he's one of the best kickers in the NFL. Not taking away anything from his skill set, highlighting that while some criticism could be warranted for lots of NFL players from CTE and other things, a sport where you're professionally getting concussions doesn't necessarily make you a great speaker on a lot of topics other than football. So again, like if he wanted to come in and say hard work pays off, here's how often I practice, here's what kicking has looked like for me. I started out as a soccer player, transitioned to football. Here's what that looks like when life throws changes at you. This is how you work to overcome. Y'all have already done some of that. You got through COVID. Here you are. You're doing hard things. This next stage in life will also be hard. Here's how you can take that dedication that you've learned and apply it to the next stage of your life. He could have done that. That's off the top of my head, right? He could have done that, and he doesn't. He wants to talk about bad leadership. He wants to talk about the politics behind COVID. He wants to talk about his view of Catholicism, which the nuns that the school is named after have came out and said, like, this isn't what the school represents. This isn't even what Catholicism represents. He's taking a very narrow view of literally everything to be divisive as opposed to having Catholicism be a safe haven for people, having the church be a place where they can go and feel welcome and supported and have a relationship with Jesus. That's not what he does either. Because he, again, like, he didn't go to seminary. He's not trained theologian. He's a pro football kicker who happens to be Catholic. All right, next paragraph I'm going to skip. He refers to the COVID fiasco, and he also thanks the president of the university, who is a man It probably isn't legal for a female to be the president of the university. So he's very fond of highlighting the men in the administration. He does it at the end of the speech too, but he doesn't talk about the nuns that the school's named after at all, because I don't know, he hates women. He's just a misogynistic dude. Um, so basically, that like he was only going to give one speech, but the president convinced him because the president is gifted at persuasion. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. This is to a group of 18 to 22-year-olds. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as growing support for degenerate cultural values and media all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. That's a little bit of word salady at the end. Like, what disorder? What is he talking about? There's no subject to that he's referring back to. Um, Abortion almost assuredly has affected the people in his audience. 18 to 22-year-olds need abortion. Abortion is health care. Some of them have been pregnant. Some of them have probably had complications. So again, that's fine. IVF, it's unlikely that 18 to 22-year-olds are having a lot to do with IVF unless they were conceived through IVF, at which point he is telling them they are bad and wrong because that thing is bad and wrong and therefore they shouldn't exist. What a weird way to win your audience over. But again, most people aren't going to necessarily know they have fertility issues at this point. They're not necessarily going to have engaged with a system like IVF. I work with and have worked with a lot of folks over the years who use IVF to start their family. It's something that they do later in their late 20s, but more likely in their 30s when they haven't been able to get pregnant and they've been trying. They've done all the other things. So, like IVF is a cultural hot button talking point. It's not something that 18 to 22-year-old college graduates are experiencing. Euthanasia, end of life issues, not 18 to 20-year-old stuff. 18 to 22-year-old stuff. Growing support for degenerate cultural values and media. The NFL, the National Football League, is a sport that is predicated on violence. Harrison Butker's own teammates, at the time that he was giving this commencement speech, had recently been arrested for driving excessively fast, like into the 100s in an unsafe way, getting into a fight in a nightclub, and physically assaulting someone. The NFL historically has had issues with cheating. Tom Brady is a multi-time cheater, the winningest quarterback of all time, the most cheating, most proved cheater of all time. Um, just the Patriots in general. We've had multiple award winners. We've had faces of the NFL who have come out in numerous scandals. NFL players who have been murderers who have continued to play. There isn't a scandal that exists that the NFL hasn't been involved in. Not that they've been involved in every scandal that exists, but like every type of scandal. Illegal gambling, betting, Robert Kraft, owner of the Patriots, getting hand jobs from his masseuse, Deshaun Watson, sexually harassing the masseuses who work in the area that he was on for a team. Like, and he's still in the NFL. Robert Kraft is still an owner. Tom Brady is a Hall of Famer. Like, they don't care about morals or degenerate cultural values. If they can make money off of it, they don't care. The NFL is a degenerate institution that pays young men money for a limited number of years to professionally ruin their bodies for the entertainment of others. And like I say this as an NFL fan, if I could quit watching the NFL, I would. It is not ethically aligned with me in a very many ways. And it will continue to get worse while the NFL tries to take care of concussions. The faster players and the more damage they do to each other's bodies, the more issues former players will have. The NFL does not do a good job of supporting its players once they are done playing. Again, they are a commodity. They are the product the NFL is selling, while people like owners and other folks like this, the owners, the commissioners, the wealthy people who are making money off of it without putting their bodies on the line. So, and again, I'm sort of lumping Harrison Butker in there because he's going to make millions of dollars every year in his contract and not have to put his body on the line in any way close to the same way that other NFL players do. An offensive lineman is going to take a lot more damage over time, more likely to get concussions, more likely to have issues. Pretty much like, I don't know, if he keeps his hips flexible, he'll be able to kick for a while and he's not really going to have any long-term impact unless he has a really bad hit at one point. Again, like the NFL is inherently risky. There could be the chance of being injured. I'm not dismissing that just because he's a kicker. He is not taking the same risks as any of his teammates. He will tell you how risk taking he is and what a victim he is later in the speech. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross at a pro abortion rally. Again, abortion is healthcare. Catholicism is against abortion. Catholicism is recently against IVF as well. They had to kind of come out and say this because people who are in the know, people who are actually doing charity work, people who work with nonprofits know that like these are complex issues that do not have clear-cut answers. The Catholic stance on abortion and IVF and all those things have changed over time because Catholicism isn't going off of what the Bible says, it's going off of what the Pope says, which is why the current Pope is unpopular. Because again, it's about what the man says, not what Scripture says. So again, like Catholicism has its own doctrinal issues here that Harrison Butker is just going to ignore. He's been so vocal in his support of the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice, which again, like, yeah, was the thing for a while. The Catholic Church hadn't necessarily come out. They recently came out with a doctrine. I wrote a blog about it. I don't remember what it was called, but it had it was about dignity, and it was all about taking people's dignity away. So again, irony not lost on anyone who follows this. I was raised Lutheran, not Catholic, so my background is pointing out the flaws in Catholicism, even when I was still a Christian, as opposed to knowing some of their doctrinal stuff in and out. But again, he just wants he's Catholic. He is going to vote for Trump because he's a right winger more than he's Catholic. Because again, if you want to say how dare Joe Biden be at a pro-abortion rally, like Donald Trump moral failings his entire life publicly. So he's not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns, COVID started under Trump, we had lockdowns under Trump, to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies, to the youth of America, like Joe Biden's not doing that. They all have glaring thing in common. They're Catholic. Nah, Catholics aren't on the forefront of pretty much anything other than fighting to take other people's rights away. The Catholic Church attendance is shrinking tremendously. The number of people who identify as Catholic is shrinking tremendously. The reach that the church has in America is smaller than it's been in a long time. The Catholic Church is still a big deal in a lot of other countries. The Catholic Church has colonized a great portion of the world. They still are doing colonial work. And so from a colonial perspective, like, yeah, we haven't decolonized all of that, but the church isn't on the forefront of anything, let alone progressive issues. They are a regressive institution. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. So here's where we're going to start to introduce an in-group, out-group from just Catholicism. And Harrison Butker wants to create his own in-group. I think like dude wants to just be a cult leader. That seems to track. He wouldn't call it that, but as a religious trauma specialist, I would say, like, yeah, he just wants his own special sect of Catholicism that he's in charge of, and he gets to decide which is good and which is bad. Which is what religion does. That's why we have all this different dogma and all these different denominations within churches, and we have all this nonsensical stuff because nobody actually agrees on a lot of this stuff because the issues aren't that clear cut. And anyone who wants to say like this is simple and we can go off of a document from thousands of years ago that we've pieced together scraps of it and edited to say what we want it to say is going to be oversimplifying things. These are the sorts of things, back to the speech here. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. Like, again, I think that's false victimization. Like, I think nobody's saying you can't bring up your Catholic talking points. Freedom of religion is very well established in this country. It's very well protected. Nobody is saying you can't talk about this stuff. As with anyone who complains about cancel culture, he's whining about accountability, that some people are pushing back on his opinion, that in sharing his opinion, it isn't automatically accepted by everyone. He's upset about having to acknowledge other people having other opinions. He just wants everyone to pat him on the head and say, good job, you're Catholic, so are we, and like move on. He's not being told he can't bring it up. He's upset that other people can bring up their views in contrast to his views. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we're going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. The church in general, not a winning proposition right now. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. The Catholic Church has billions of dollars. They're not doing charity. They're avoiding paying taxes. They're avoiding paying victims for child sex abuse. They're avoiding paying victims of abuse of any kind. They are not doing charity in any significant way in proportion to how much wealth they have accumulated throughout the centuries. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite a reputation for speaking my mind. News to me, as someone who follows the NFL pretty closely. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. Again, like, it is maddening to have him bring up this talking point of staying in your lane over and over and over again when he doesn't talk about football at all in this speech. He talks about being a business owner and entrepreneur. He brings up his engineering degree. He doesn't talk about playing football. Bro, that's the only reason you're giving this talk is because you're a famous football player. This college is near Kansas City. You play for the Kansas City Chiefs. You are giving this speech because you kick a ball far accurately. A little inflated rubber skin covered in leather. That's what you're good at doing. You kick it. And you make millions of dollars for doing it. And you're going to come in and talk about staying in your lane. Again, you could talk about showing up for practice, nutrition, the diet you keep, the workouts you maintain, in season, off season, the changes you have from cold weather games to warm weather games, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot that he is an expert on that he could share that would be useful and I think make succinct, relevant points for a college commencement speech that he's not talking about. Not staying in his lane. That's the entire speech. None of this is in his lane. He's only giving this because he's a professional football player, a kicker. Ugh. And this is page 1 of the speech. I'm so sick of it already. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, I mean, again, like, Jesus didn't exist. Odds are he was a mythical figure who never existed. The church was founded by Paul, later retconned by the Catholic Church to say, on this rock, referring to Peter, I will build the church. So the Catholics identify Peter as the first pope, but like, that goes against anything that we can prove and seems to just be mythology, which, like, organized religion. So founded by Jesus Christ. Okay, like, I'll allow it because I know that's Catholic doctrine, but like, even going off of even saying the church exists the way the church talks about it, we know pretty definitively that it was founded by Paul. It is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Okay, he thinks he doesn't have a choice in this. And like, again, your religious beliefs are all a choice. They're all a choice. None of it's factual. None of it is predetermined. None of it is necessary. It's all choice-based. Don't be mistaken. Even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will persuade you to remain silent. Catholic guilt is definitely a thing, but again, he's not addressing issues that are actually prevalent in the Catholic Church. Like Catholic priests abusing kids and then telling them to be silent. He's just saying, like, culture at large is telling you to be silent about being Catholic, which, like, again, it's not. There was even an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and, as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, "It's exactly what cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless." His proof, his evidence of Catholics are being persecuted is a movie made by a Catholic to get this propagandistic talking point across. It is pure propaganda to say we're being silenced. We don't have any proof of that, so we're going to make a movie showing that. Aliens exist. I feel strongly about this. Let me show you this Ridley Scott film titled Alien. Like, nah, it's a movie. It's fiction. It's not proof of anything. Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. False. The Catholic Church ran the world for literal centuries, close to probably over 1,000 years. We could make the argument the Catholic Church owned and colonized a great deal of the world and was the main cultural driving force through a lot of things. I would say America today is still culturally Christian. Well, that has included other denominations than just Catholicism overwhelmingly Christianity is not countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were put to death. No, false. Again, like this is a myth that's been debunked. If you follow current research on biblical times, on Roman history, um, the persecution of the church is not a scientific fact. It is again another myth. Christians were not persecuted at any greater degree than anyone else. There was no great hunting down and killing of Christians. That just is a lie the church has told. We can definitively say that that didn't happen. Were put to death for their adherence to her teachings. Is he referring her? I'm not sure. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, diversity, equity, inclusion are not tyrannical. The church is tyrannical. The church has put thousands of people to death. The church was never really persecuted. The church was in control and still is in a lot of control of things. The church won't even pay for victims of the church's sex abuse that the church covered up and knew about for years. So a tyrant is someone who has unusual power over other people and uses that power to hurt people. That's the church. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Equity in and of itself would be paradoxical to be tyrannical because it can't be. There needs to be hierarchical power for there to be a tyrant. There needs to be a power structure. Equity is against those things. So like it's not even word salad, it's actually false. It's specifically backwards. It's inaccurate to say that tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, like white dude playing pro football, like you go into any locker room in the professional sports, the NFL included, like there's a lot of diversity there. Like dude works in a diverse workplace. His team does well because of diversity. His sport is based on some big fat dudes in the offensive and defensive line. And again, that's a stereotype. A lot of offensive linemen and defensive linemen are the best athletes in the world. So I shouldn't stereotype them. But again, these guys, these big dudes who are 6'8", 340 pounds. Here's this guy who's really good at throwing the ball. Here's this guy who's really quick at running. Here's this guy who's really quick at running and catching. Here's this guy who's really good at running and throwing his body against another human being's body to get them down to the ground. Even his skill set, Harrison Butker's skill set, is all dependent on someone else snapping the ball accurately, quickly, and somebody else holding the ball properly for him to kick the ball really hard. So like diversity of skill sets is necessary in his sport. Any team sport requires diversity, you dumb. He's obviously talking about racial diversity because he's not only a misogynist, he's probably racist. We fear speaking the truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Everything he said so far is inaccurate. He's not speaking any truth at all. Congress, here's another lie. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail. That's not what Congress passed at all. He's being an anti-Semite. And the bill was related to reducing anti-Semitism. Yeah. Again, just more lies when he's talking about speaking truth. Make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order. Oh my gosh, Harrison's going to talk about what he needs to change himself. And it starts with our leaders. JK, he's not taking any accountability here. The bishops and the priests appointed by God as our spiritual leaders must be rightly ordered. The one thing the church does well that I bring up often as somebody who works with religious trauma is organized. The organized part of organized religion is done well. The church is very structural. It's very hierarchy based, and it does that well. That's why the church has so many communities and why there's instant community attached to the church, because in-group, out-group dynamics is what organized religion is based on. I'm not going to skip this because it's very, very, very Catholic. Yeah, it's just Catholicism. Blah, 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 temptation, priests. Tragically, so many priests revolve much of their happiness from the adulation they receive from their parishioners, and in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove problematic every time because, as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Let me talk about Taylor Swift real quick. Again, because he's a celebrity from playing football, not because he's well known for being Catholic. Um, undue familiarity. Again, this makes sense in a Catholic sense because we want to have that hierarchy. We want those boundaries to be really strict and rigid so that we can enforce the in group out group dynamics, so that we can kick people out when we need to, so we can call them heretics and burn them at the stake. We can just kick them out of the church. We're not burning people at the stake anymore. But the Catholic Church did that for a long time. So he's wanting this restoration of uh, rigid structure because it's all about in-group out-group dynamics, and the power at the top of those in-groups then remains safer when there isn't any flexibility or movability. uh, yeah, I'm skipping the priest stuff because this is already a long video. uh, Lots of good priests still. We shouldn't be motivated by fear. If you're being sued, if you're being removed, if you're being disliked. um, Oh, this is about COVID. Because of this, countless people died alone without access to the sacraments, and it's a tragedy we must never forget. Again, over 1 million Americans died from COVID. So people weren't dying because they didn't have access to the sacraments. People were dying because we didn't social distance properly and didn't take precautions. We never quite got enough people on board. Looking at you, Harrison Butker. We didn't have people using their platforms to promote safety and be charitable with each other, that we could wear masks when we're totally healthy to do that. Um, and so people died from that. And so again, he just has this whole thing backwards where he's the victim instead of looking at like the undue deaths that were caused by people not taking a global pandemic seriously because they're such selfish pricks. Let's talk about heroes, blah, 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 blah. Shepherds. Um, I say all this not from a place of anger as we get the leaders we deserve. That sounds like an angry criticism. But this does make me reflect on staying in my lane and focusing on my own vocation, which is kicking a football, and how I can better be a father and husband and live in the world, but not be of it. Bro, like you seek adulation. The crowd goes wild when you kick a ball through two metal posts. Like he's pointing all these fingers at other people and then talks about staying in his lane and then like ignores it. Buddy, you're not talking because you're a good dad and a good husband. You're talking because you kick a ball through a post, two posts. Focusing on my vocation while praying and fasting for these men will do more for the church than me complaining about our leaders. Again, false. If he didn't give this complainy, whiny, meandering talk, nobody would be talking about his Catholic faith. Literally praying and fasting would do less. Like, here's evidence of it. I'm doing a video about this. If he had just stayed in his lane and prayed quietly, like the Bible tells believers to do, I wouldn't be doing this. So, no, prayer and fasting would do less. This is proof of this. What a nonsense thing to say. Then stay home and pray and fast. If you truly believe that that would do more, then don't give this speech. There seems to be so much confusion coming from our leaders. There needs to be concrete examples for people to look to. Places like Benedictine, a little Kansas college built high on a bluff above the Missouri River. Uh, look at the campus. Lots of men doing things. I am certain reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it. Because again, he hates gay people. But the true God centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify God. He's not, none of that happens. How many football players do their little points to the sky as their way to be like, look, I glorify God. Like, nah, you glorify yourself. You own fancy cars. You own a big house. You're not doing charity. You're not doing any of this stuff. The charity you do is because it's a tax write-off so that you don't have to give as much of your money back to the citizens who support you by buying tickets and jerseys and paying and subsidizing the arenas that you play in. What an idiot. So again, I don't know what articles he's talking about. Something where Catholics apparently were held accountable and we're proud of it. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourself in this era of human existence. Probably not. In small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you, and how many of you are sitting here now about to cross the stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you're going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. What a stupid thing to say at a college commencement. Um, there are people who go to Christian colleges for what is referred to as an MRS degree, um, to find their husband and get married. And like that's a thing in conservative circles because that is what patriarchy looks like. And so when you're raised in patriarchal circles, you're going to look for those types of things. Um, and no one's some people are looking forward to it, but again, not a vast majority of people. That's really an older thing, an older timey thing. It happens less and less. People are going to college to get degrees. They can afford to pay for things. Harrison Butker went to private schools because his mom's a physicist and had a career that paid really well. She's a very accomplished person. She's has numerous journal articles and publications from her career, her expertise in a scientific field that she worked really hard for, that Harrison Butker then led a privileged life from. She didn't stop her career to raise kids. She was a career person who made really good money and afforded Harrison Butker the chance to get ahead. Super privileged dude, not at all mentioning his parents or the work that they put in to give him the life that he's had. Again, this guy's an idiot. Um, this is the most. Uh, this is the most of what people have criticized in his speech. It's misogynistic. It's a hate-filled speech for a lot of marginalized communities. It's a very privileged speech that he's given, and it doesn't take any context into consideration for his own life, which is what privilege is all about. But basically saying like the best thing you can do is have kids. I'm opposed. I mean, Harrison Butker here is already stated he's opposed to IVF. So like he wants you to have kids, but only in a certain way. Again, there's so much in-group, out-group dynamics here. Uh, you can only have kids a certain way, and then you should stay home and raise them when that's not what he experienced. That's not why his life has been a success, because that's not what his parents did. I'm on the stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. Okay, let's talk about the word vocation for a second. His vocation is Kansas City Chiefs kicker. He's a kicker in the NFL. He went to school for something else, got a degree in something else. He makes money by kicking a ball. Vocation is this fun thing that the church likes to bring up as a way to try and control people to say that you have a calling. And it's a weird twist on colonial concepts of capitalism. It's colonizing in a different way because it is related to capitalism in that your vocation is often your job. But vocation in the Catholic community and churches at large is very much about what you are meant to be doing. What is your higher calling? I was raised Lutheran. Pastors aren't hired, they're given calls. Teachers aren't hired, they're given calls. Their calls are less impressive because women can be teachers, and so we can't have them get in as much pastors. So they get a different type of call. Vocation is a fancy word to say, we're going to put some shoulds on your job. You should do this thing. You should do it willingly. You should put extra hours in without getting paid because it is your vocation. So there's all this extra guilt and judgment that's put onto things like vocation. He's using it interchangeably with career here, but like again, the implied Catholic guilt is there. I'm beyond blessed with many talents God has given me, kicking a football. But it cannot be overstated that all my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. Bruh, you could have 8 different baby mamas and have 8 different children by all of them, and you'd still be making millions of dollars for kicking a football. It doesn't have anything to do with who you met in band class. It has to do with the fact that you were privileged enough to be able to play for high level sports throughout your life because your mom had a job that paid really well, and doesn't have anything to do with you or your wife having kids has to do with the fact that you can kick a ball pretty far, pretty accurately. She's primary educator to our children because, of course, she is, because we need to indoctrinate them in the Catholic faith that we think is right, because anybody else's opinions and voices are bad and wrong, because I think diversity is tyrannical. I'm Harrison Butker, the idiot. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. Again, absolutely false. Dude's at his games, his practices. Football is the number one priority in his life. She's the person that knows me best at my core, and it's through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. Because again, we can't know that for sure, because then like the church loses power over you. So we always got to be a little nervy if we're going to get heaven or not. I say this because I've seen it firsthand how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. What he's saying is his life is significantly easier because his wife takes care of everything at home while he can focus on football, which makes really good money so she can afford to stay at home and not have to worry about money at all, because everything about his life is privileged. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true. Bummer for her. But if you ask her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no, because she's married to a professional athlete who can support the lifestyle that she has without having to work. Again, like, this is so tone deaf, speaking to a bunch of people who are needing to go to college, who took out student loans to go to college because they want a better life for themselves. And the path to do that is to get a good paying career. The percentage of people who make money as professional athletes is tiny. It's like less than 1% of the population. The percentage of people who go from college sports to be on pro athletes is tiny. So, like, idiot. No one from Benedictine College is going to go on to play sports professionally. It's a small liberal arts Catholic college. Like, he can't say, do what I do and you'll get to where I'm at. It's not a meritocracy. He's stupid lucky and privileged in his life. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not myself. Everything he said is his own personal opinions and his view of Catholicism and his version of things. None of it is about God. He hasn't quoted scripture once. He quoted a movie, his evidence. Everything I'm saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, accurate, but rather a place of experience. Again, which experience translates merely to anecdotal evidence. What he can give us is some nice whimsical stories that say his privileged life led to his privileged outcome. Thanks, Harrison. I'm hopeful that these words seem not from those of man much older than you who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we are seeing around us is normal. What? An idiot. That's not his experience at all. And he's not like some old wise dude on top of a mountain. He's not a guru. He's a football kicker in his late 20s. He's not wise, which he admits. He's not experienced either. The lives that D1 athletes live while playing sports in college is not one of hardship or difficulty. Everything is handed to them and made so they can focus merely on their sport, because their sport makes their college lots of money. Even the sports that don't make a lot of money, their lives are predicated around their sport. I dated a cross-country runner in college. Her meals were provided for her. Her workouts were provided for her. She had massages and athletic trainers who made her body feel good so she could compete. She had her class schedule picked for her so she wouldn't miss practice ever or have to miss for any competitions. Let's be honest, there's nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. Again, I didn't double check, but I'm guessing he had kids after he was making millions of dollars in his career. No matter how you spin it, there's nothing natural about Catholic birth control. Like, that's a Catholic talking point for a while. There's nothing new here. There's nothing accurate about what Catholics believe around birth control. It's based on bad science. It's all about men controlling women's bodies, men controlling everything. It's only the past few years that I've grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because, as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and as a father and as a man. It's not his vocation to be a man. It's not his vocation to be a father. That's a choice. It's not his vocation to be a husband. That's a choice. None of that stuff is like calling or necessary. That could all end if his wife divorces him, or, lots of ways that could end. To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, patriarchy. And when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. The absence of men in the home is absence in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around our nation. Again, like numerous criminals in the NFL professionally, the NFL works to put off their court cases so that they can keep making money off these players. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find in the US. Huh. I wonder why that is. It's not because other countries are more Catholic than us. It's not because of anything other than our policies put more black and brown men in jail than any other country in existence. Let's see if he talks about that. And a correlation can be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity. Oh, so like, I don't know, men not being in the home is because they're not very masculine? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Fight against cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. It would be hard for Harrison Butker to give all his money away to local charities and stop being an NFL player and focus on being a dad. You might have talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something you might think suits you better. This might be in relation to he grew up playing soccer and maybe he likes soccer more than he likes football, but he couldn't make as much money playing soccer as he can playing football, so we picked that. I speak from an experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker. Well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Don't think he's doing too many speeches anymore. And an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. Again, I speak from experience introvert who now finds myself a professional football kicker. That's the only thing anyone knows you from. What is he on about? Oh, can I bring this home? There's several more paragraphs. He talks about the traditional Latin Mass. I don't know what that means. Is that in Latin? Because, like, that's not converting anyone or winning anyone over. Um, Sadly, I'm sure many of you know the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have that's capitalized by the way, Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage. Some even leave the church and abandon God. It's always heartbreaking to hear these stories. There's this desire to know what happened and what went wrong. Again, they left the cult, the Benedictine bubble. We refer to it as Lutheran bubble. I was raised Lutheran. Is where you interact with other people of other faith backgrounds, other walks of life, other experiences, and you learn that your vision of things, your version of things, isn't the only one that exists. That there's a lot of gray in the world. There's very little black and white. And so when you get these different ideas, you can actually make an informed decision. So leaving the Benedictine bubble creates more informed decisions. People making informed decisions leads to people leaving the church. Nothing's going wrong. The thing that's wrong is staying in the bubble. What you must remember is that life is about doing the small things well. Again, he could have sculpted his whole talk around that and how a difference of inches or millimeters in where he places his foot against the ball while kicking a ball professionally leads to big outcomes. So, setting yourself up for success and surrounding yourself with people who continually push you to be the best version of yourself. I say this all the time that iron sharpens iron. What a weird thing to say. You're not a blacksmith. You kick a rubber ball covered in leather. You don't have anything to do with iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you're dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? Or why is a made up title what you're living your life for? If your friend group is filled with people who only think that you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you? What's Harrison doing this weekend? He's doing a football game. What's he doing the weekend after that? Football game. What's he doing the weekend after that? Football game. A lot of those are on Sunday, so I don't even know when he's going to his traditional mass. There's probably traditional mass every day, huh? Again, raised Lutheran, not Catholic. As you prepare to enter into the workforce, it is extremely important that you actually think about the places you are moving to. Who is the bishop? What kind of parishes are there? Again, he didn't pick Kansas City because of the bishop. Picked Kansas City because they drafted him. He didn't do that. That's a thing that happened to him. It's experience. He's staying there because they win championships and they pay him a lot of money to keep winning championships. This dude's a hypocrite. Cost of living must not be the only arbiter of your choice, says the multimillionaire. For a life without God is not a life at all, and the cost of salvation is worth more than any career. The Bible very specifically says that a wealthy man will not enter heaven. It would be easier to pass the camel through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to make it into heaven. Is Harrison giving his money away? Has he signed a contract for a veteran minimum, or is he making millions of dollars every year? Ugh, this guy. And the cost of salvation is worth more than your career. Great. Excited for him to give all his money away. I'm excited for the future. Me too, when you give all your money away. And I pray that something I've said will resonate as you move on to the next chapter of your life. Probably won't. This is arguably the worst commencement speech I've ever heard. Never be afraid to profess the one holy Christian and apostolic church. Again, being Catholic is more important than Jesus. For this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my message today has a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches. Again, so he doesn't have a lot of wisdom and no fluff here. Even though I would argue it's all fluff because he didn't actually say anything useful or relevant to his expertise or why he's giving the talk at all. Most of this was fluff. But like, yeah, it wasn't what is expected. But I believe that this audience, a group of recently graduated 18 to 22-year-olds, and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we all want to go, which is heaven. Yeah, but like not at a graduation ceremony. Talking about heaven's great when we're doing like the Eucharist or like the last rites, right? Like end of life stuff. Let's talk about heaven. I thank God for Benedictine College and for the example it provides to the world. I thank God for men. Should have just stopped there. For men like President Minnis who are doing their part for the kingdom. Come to find out, you can have an authentically Catholic college and a thriving football program. Because that's the only time he mentions football in this whole thing. Not his football, the program that he didn't graduate from. He went to Georgia Tech. Make no mistake, you're entering into mission territory in a post God world. Nietzsche wrote, God is dead. That's not what he means by this. But you were made for this, and with God by your side and constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. Christ is king to the heights. That must be their school slogan or something. What a weird way to end. Oh, man, that was terrible. Um, I'm an hour into this video. Also terrible. So, really bad. He didn't ever apologize for this. He's doubled down. He has been like, oh, poor me, and people hate Catholics. It's like, no, the nuns of the school is related to have said, you don't represent us, and your speech doesn't represent what Catholicism needs to be today to be charitable to all people. It's just full of hypocrisy, it's full of political talking points, and it's all wrong. The one thing in there that he said that I agree with is I don't have a lot of wisdom. Correct. Uh, my Aaron Rodgers video is going to be 3 hours long because I know a lot about Aaron Rodgers' life and I'm a Packers fan. This is awful. And again, none of this is like we hate Catholicism. Like I do. I'm a religious trauma specialist, and I was raised Lutheran, so I was raised to hate Catholicism. I had a teacher who said that the Pope was the Antichrist. Like that's the world I grew up in. Now that I'm not Christian at all, and I do religious trauma work, I realize that like the church is actively harming people and fighting against lawsuits that could be helpful for people, and not doing anywhere close to the charity that they need to be doing to consider themselves a nonprofit organization. So none of this is about hating Catholicism. This is all about a tone deaf speech to the wrong audience from the wrong person who doesn't acknowledge any of his own privilege and isn't doing anywhere close to anything that be considered charity himself. He's not espousing the values that he says people need to. He's trying to create this in-group out-group dynamic where he, as a white dude with 7 pounds of hair gel in his hair and beard, gets to be in charge of other people, specifically his wife. But it seems like he wants to be in charge of other people's wives too, because he's opposed to IVF and adoption and all this other stuff. So yeah, he just wants to be in control, and that's what makes him a good Catholic, because it's about control. I have more to say, but it's an hour into the video, so I think I'm losing my voice. I have to go to work and do actual therapy for people who want help. Good night. What a terrible, terrible experience that was. I thank you for joining me in it. If you're still here an hour later, what a fun time we've had. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. Like, subscribe, that helps. None of what I'm doing is algorithm friendly, so if you interact with the channel, it does really help other people find my stuff. So comment, that's great. I will comment back, promise. I respond to all my comments. Um, Share this, like, and subscribe. If you have thoughts or opinions, please, please, please leave those in the comments. If you want me to talk about other sad rich white dudes, I've got a list going, but I can always add to that. You can find my stuff at wellnesswithjared.com. I wrote about the Catholic doctrine, their values statement about dignity. You can find that over on my website, wellnesswithjared.com. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/wellnesswithjared. So you can support the channel there, get merch, do some other cool stuff. Find my podcast, Your Therapist Needs Therapy, there. You get the full video interviews for the podcast over there. So I got all sorts of stuff. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'll see y'all next week with a shorter video, not about sad rich white guys, but I have more of those coming. Peace, y'all. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else.